Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh semua teman IATMI. Perkenalkan, nama saya Yando, TM ITB Angkatan 91, pensiunan SLB dan saat ini sebagai Sekjen Kopum IATMI. Selamat datang di acara Marathon Training IATMI UK. First of all, saya berterima kasih kepada Mas Benny dan segenap pengurus IATMI UK atas excellent inisiatif ini during coronavirus downturns. Dalam data acara ini yang diselenggarakan berdurasi 2-3 jam. And when the corona is over, kami IATMI Pusat menyediakan kursus-kursus dengan detail yang lebih dalam berdurasi dari 1-5 hari. Please check out our Instagram IATMI Pusat dan join our Telegram Big IATMI. Stay healthy untuk semua teman IATMI dan keluarga dimanapun kalian berada. Selamat menikmati acara ini. Terima kasih.
Halo teman-teman semua, saya Benny Setiawan, Ketua IATMI UK. Selamat datang di acara Marathon Sharing Session IATMI UK yang akan menghadirkan 13 kelas singkat selama 60 menit per hari, 30 hari ke depan, bersama teman-teman terbaik saya. IATMI UK berupaya memberikan yang terbaik untuk kita semua. Jadi mari manfaatkan kesempatan ini untuk menjalin kerjasama, bersinergi, dan berkolaborasi untuk Indonesia. Selamat berdiskusi, tetap sehat, dan selalu jaga kesehatan. Salam sinergi, IATMI UK.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My fellow students dialing from Indonesia. It is now 8 a.m. in the morning in London, and it is a beautiful sunny day today, as you can see from my back. And I want to welcome you all to this session today. And as you all know, that IATMI UK is currently organizing a series of online technical talk, right? And this marathon sharing session has been started since the 8th of April and will be ended on the 6th of May 2020. And in the pipeline, as you also know, that we have a total of 19 topics to be presented almost once every 2 days within 30 days. And covering most of the oil and gas aspect from economics, fiscal, field operations, health and safety, and also reservoir management. And as of today, we have completed 10 from a total of 19 sessions. And this is equivalent to around 5,000 hours of total learning, or about 360 hours of total learning per day since we embarked 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, we had a discussion with one of our senior figure in the Indonesian oil and gas, Pak Benny Lubiantara, and also Mas Putra Adiguna, who's also joining in today, and Mas Ardian Nengkoda. Basically about the new era of the Indonesian upstream oil and gas industry. And the message was crystal clear that we need a strong and visionary leadership. Talking about leadership, you know, the conversation must then involve a conversation about the young Indonesian, the future of the nation, and the one who will basically lead the country. And during these past few days, we received requests from you, students, to also organize a career talk. Perhaps because of the current situation, has raised concerns among the students who will be graduating or just graduated from university. And today, I'm pleased to let you know that we have Pak Roni Hendrawan joining us, another senior executive in the Indonesian oil and gas sector. Pak Roni is currently the director of global accounts of Schlumberger Limited based in London, UK. And prior to this position, Pak Roni held a variety of roles in Asia, South America, and Europe. And earlier in his career, Pak Roni was the division manager in Mexico and Central America, vice president for Asia Pacific, vice president for global sales and marketing based in Paris, and also Indonesia managing director for Schlumberger. Pak Roni holds a master's degree from Erasmus University in Rotterdam and a degree in electronics and telecommunication from Trisakti University. Pak Roni joined Schlumberger as a wireline field engineer in 1997 and was the Schlumberger recruiter and university relations manager in Indonesia from 2004 until 2006. And this position brought him in close contact and engagement with students and university across Indonesia, a passion that he keeps alive to this day. I personally was lucky enough to be interviewed by Pak Roni Hendrawan nearly 15 years ago. And yeah, without further ado, I would like to invite Pak Roni to start the talk. Please, Pak Roni, if you can start pulling up your slide.
Terima kasih, Pak Benny. Let me just share my screen now. Please let me know if you can see it, and I will start.
Yeah, we can see it properly, Pak.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for everyone for joining this call. Katanya Pak Benny harus dibawakan dalam bahasa Inggris. Saya sebenarnya orang Jawa, but I will switch to English. Okay, so first of all, I think you've been hearing a lot of things, especially in the last 3 weeks. So when I prepare this material, I try to ask myself, like, what will be success looks like after the end of our 60 to 90 minutes? And I think it's important that, you know, like, I have to pass you information. So by the end of the session, you have enough information for you to take a more informed decision going forward. So, and this is important, and as a preparation of this, I spoke to Pak Benny also to capture the feedback from the previous session, and that's what we will do. Toward the end of the presentation, I will share with you 2 slides that we are using in our company on how we evaluate our employees, which is at the end will be really helpful for you in your future job interview. So as I mentioned before, we've been hearing so many bad things. So what is important now is 2 things. One is to separate between perception and facts. And the second, as usual in any unprecedented times, you always have to look into the overall macro. So that's what we will discuss in the next, let's say, maximum 45 minutes. You may see this presentation a little bit prescriptive because, to be honest, if we will be only going for Q&A, you're not going to get enough. So I will share with you information that will help you for the future. Before that, let me start by saying Eid Mubarak, Selamat Berpuasa. During this tough time, I wish you a peaceful and blessed Ramadan. No doubt, this is the time that everyone will remember in the future. So, these are the top 3 questions that basically you asked during the previous session. And if you look into the question, it's largely a lot on asking what's next for me. Either you for a student, as a student, or also you for youth, you know, like young professional in Indonesia. And I'm grateful with this opportunity because I think way beyond the situation in oil and gas, more importantly is for you as the new generation for our country. So these 3 questions, hopefully you're gonna start to see some information for you to answer it yourself. And toward the end, during the Q&A, we will be discussing deeper around these 3 subjects. So let me start by sharing the reality. The picture on the left is the picture that actually I took it just 3 hours after I discussed with Pak Benny and Pak Jackson on preparing this call. This picture on the left is, as you can see, this is the May contract for the WTI crude. And the one on the right, this is the capacity for the storage. So these 2 pictures basically tell us one thing, that there is no floor in commodity price if the problem is on the storage. And that's exactly what happened. So if the question today, is it bad? Yes, and it's going to get ugly. Is it the end of the world? The answer is a big no. And the reason why I want to share with you, because if you look into the remark at the bottom, this is the report that I received just a couple days ago. As you can see, The global E&P CapEx is still at 21% less compared to 2019. That's why I mentioned before that, yes, it is bad. But let's not forget that if you look into the industry today, at least among our top 50 customers, there is still about 320 billion spent in 2020. So while every time you see the TV or any news, you've been hearing or seeing bad things, let's not forget that will be still more than 300 billion spent this year. If you look into the breakdown, no doubt NOCs and as usual are the most resilient. That's what you see with 17% drop year on year. Majors at 21%. Independent also showing the similar behavior as what we've seen in the past during any downturn. These are the company with less tolerance to make mistake fundamentally, and that's the reason why their approach has always been very conservative. On the positive note, when the commodity price increasing and come back into the profitable level, independent are the companies that can also double or triple their spend in the span of 12 months. So I want to open with this slide because it's really important for you to acknowledge the reality, and it's bad. It's gonna get ugly the time the OPEC production cut starting in May and June, but this is not the end of the world. It's still a lot of future for our industry. So let me move to the next one. You may not seen this one, but I would like to share with you on the research outcome from Rystad. The one on the left is just to show you on what exactly the prediction on the number of COVID-19. The one on the right is basically the free cash flow position from the public E&P companies. So from this information, I would like to share two things. One, the industry today is really largely on the COVID-19 resolution. If you talk to the company, for example, like Perenco already told me they will start the operation once the oil hit solidly above 20, for example. So the problem now really is try to see how long it takes for the industry and for the supply of the oil to get consumed. And in the following slide, I will also share with you on that. But based on the research, we predict that by 1st of May, it will be 19.2 million people infected by COVID-19. What you are seeing today is only the number that people get tested and basically declare either in Johns Hopkins University or different source of information. But that's what we believe, that in reality, by 1st of May, it will be 19.2 million infected people globally. The one on the right, this is just to show you on the free cash flow position. And this is important. If you are listening into most of the oil companies' disclosure for their Q1 earning, everyone is telling the same thing. It's a cash, basically it's a cash preservation. So everyone wants to save money, right? Because it's very important for them, for example, for their dividend payout. In the case of Schlumberger, as you can see, we already announced we cut our dividend by 75%, and that's to basically give us roughly about $2 billion of cash every year. Another good thing that you see on the slide, on the picture on the right, is the fact that this time the industry is much better prepared. The previous downturn, starting in 2015, took much longer because the industry doesn't have enough capital discipline. That's why it takes long. I recall when I was in Indonesia, it started in 2015, it ended only by June 2017. So if you look into the previous downturn in 2019, let's not forget the previous downturn in 2009 only takes no more than 6 months. in less than 6 months, actually the commodity price back to $55 per barrel. So, and this is important for me to share because you've been hearing so many negativity. I want to also share with you on the positive side on what we will be discussing. In the next 2 slides, I would like to share with you trends by the geography and trends by the customer profile. So let's start by trends by geography. Within my responsibility today, I'm responsible for worldwide. So I have a good visibility on what's happening worldwide. North America, no doubt, is the drastic cut in shale oil and oil sand. If you look in shale oil has not really generated a free cash flow for the last 6 years. Even when the oil is at 80, there is no free cash flow in shale oil. The opportunity that you have as a student in shale oil is trying to use the engineering approach. Shale oil in US land today is a manufacturing approach. The biggest competition for wireline, for example, is the fact that they are not even logging to get the data. So if you can, for example, if you are a PhD or master degree student, and you can have a new innovation around triple porosity and try to improve the economic of shale oil, a lot of people will be calling you. When we talk about US land, nearly 99% of the news we are talking about the shale oil. People tend to forget the associated gas in US land, that definitely will disrupt the LNG pricing. So going forward, let's say by 2021 onward, LNG pricing, I believe, will move into more index than a spot price. Sorry, to the spot price than the index price. We also see the moderate spend in Gulf of Mexico. As we speak today, Gulf of Mexico capex reduction stands at about 31%. And I will elaborate more in the following slide when we talk about the customer profile. So that's the picture of North America. Latin America is always driven with the agenda of NOCs. So we are seeing today exploration offshore is start to slow down. And as we can see that if you look across the countries in Latin America, they always carry a heavy social responsibilities in their business. And I think that will make Latin America recovery more likely is going to be slower. The next one is UK, continental Europe, and Africa. You may be asking why I group this thing together. If you look into the independents, 40% of the independent spend decided in continental Europe. 38% of the independent related spends decided in London. This spends a lot actually being invested in Africa. And that's the reason why I group it together. So if you look into the trend of the independents, normally they always better on the year one during the downturn, and they're going to get worse on the year two. So we have to be really cautious when it comes into the independent spend in 2021. Africa will be hit the most, no doubt. But as we speak, Angola is only, I think, 4 to 5 rigs left in Angola, and people are stopping the operation. So if you look into the trends today, a lot of reduction in Africa. Most of the independent companies, they are pulling back the investment to try to preserve North Sea. Because if you look into North Sea, a lot of project in North Sea has $20 per barrel in the lifting, compared to lifting cost in Africa, which is easily more than 40. If you are a student, even if you are in, like a petrotechnical expert, you need to know about digital. Digital transformation, the spend related to digital and lowering carbon emission is intact. This is what we see today. Okay, so this is important, and take the perspective of digital to improve the operational efficiency. When you talk about the carbon emission, the response from the majors and from the smaller independent are totally different. The response from the majors, they directly put a capital expenditure to make it happen. Take an example of the Northern Lighting project with Statoil. But if you talk into the independent companies, their priority on carbon emission is starting from number one is operational efficiency. So everyone's saying, I don't have enough money from the CapEx standpoint. So for me to reduce my carbon emission is to improve my operational efficiency. So don't forget that. Middle East and Asia Pacific, NOC always been very resilient. You will start to see revision, but NOC will be the most resilient among other companies. You will start to see delay in large project FIDs. For example, you may see in the news that Woodside already delayed the Bros project. The third bullet point is interesting because this is against the odds. If you look into the trend of international Chinese E&P companies, and I'm talking here about CNPC, Sinopec, and Sinok, actually they are increasing their spend by 7%. And the reason behind that, because when it comes into the Chinese operators, their commitment is closely linked into the 5 years plan. And as you know that like they already at the 13 5 years plan, and they will continue their commitment. PetroChina, for example, while everyone is cutting, they increase the recruiting target by 30% to support their international expansion. So if I move to the next one, this is the trends by company profile. Okay, when you read the news, it's good to know what is the revision of CapEx in 2020, but the real information that you need is what exactly is the CapEx revision against 2019, because that will reflect the reduction of activity at the year-on-year basis. Starting from the left to the right, the customer group A, these are companies with the US land or shale oil exposure, suffering a lot when it comes into cash flow. Here we are talking Han Oil. If you talk about Hess, Murphy, even Repsol, these are the companies that paying basically the cost of their investment in shale oil. That's where you see 33% drop year on year. NOCs and the medium and large cap companies, these are the companies, and this is my own analysis, by the way. The way I put it, I try to see which companies are spending 500 million in their CapEx, 500 million or more. You see that group of company has more resilient with 17% drop. The next one is aligned with what I mentioned before, which is the independent. So this is the 35% drop, the largest, but also the biggest opportunity to come back. If you are a student and you are looking for a job, do not forget private equities as one of the target. If you look 3 years ago, the private equities like BlackRock, Carlyle, normally they only lend the money and that's it. That's the only business model that they have is a lender. But now they also want to be the partner. Means that private companies will also start hiring people like you, especially if you are master degree and PhD, because they want to make sure before they lend money to a certain operators, they understand exactly the risk. The next group is the customer group D. This is the Chinese E&Ps. As I mentioned before, they are increasing 7%. Well, if you look into the Chinese operation in China, largely is protected. Really hard, for example, for you to get a job in Beijing for a company like Sinopec, CNPC, or Sinopec. But let's not forget, you have the opportunity for their operation outside China. I want you to remember one thing. Every Chinese operation outside China is the size of Qatar Petroleum. They are spending 4 to 4.5 billion every year. So don't forget that if you try to find a job in the industry. Moving to the next one. In the next two slides, I will share with you on the conversation happening in Q4 2019. And this is important because when you look into the conversation in Q4 2019, I think you will understand better on what exactly is the future of the industry, way beyond what you've been hearing in the last 3 weeks. So the first one is the Energy Intelligence 40th Conference. The picture on the left, actually that's during my dinner with most of the CEO. The one on the stage, that's Ben from Shell and Bob Dudley from BP. So if you look into the transition between 2019 entering to 2020, it was really, really positive atmosphere. Differently when we are transitioning from 2018 to 2019. So if you recall, back in 2019, we know that it's going to be election in US. At that time, Saudi Aramco, we know they're going to go for the IPO. So, and that's the reason why when we talk into the lenders, if you talk into the financial sectors, everyone said the same. Now they start seeing a genuine action from the government and regulatory makers to make sure 2020 will be much better than 2019. That conversation was happening during that conference. Everyone is confident 2020 will be much better than 2019. The one on the right, I would like to share the picture. That's the picture that normally you see outside the conference. So the one on the left is the picture inside the conference. The one on the right is the picture outside the conference. And that's related into reduction of the carbon emission. Right? So while I understand you are maybe studying mainly subsurface or perhaps downstream or midstream, but don't forget any differentiation that you can have around reducing carbon emission will help a lot on your process on to find a job. I will not go into one by one on that comment, but I would like to share one discussion that I have with the upstream CEO of Shell related to the last comment, which is shortening the appraisal. So if you look today, one of the key focus really is to try to bring the first oil faster. Exploration to first oil. On that same dinner, actually, I was sitting with Anna Sambeli, and she's board of director of Petrobras. Petrobras, as we speak, not as we speak, actually it was a couple months ago, they said they launched what they call it with 1,000 days vision. Means that in the future, Petrobras want to bring the first oil only 1,000 days after the successful exploration. If you talk with a company like CNOOC International, which is largely run by the Nexon in Aberdeen, CNOOC International, they already even start the well design and well targeting, right? I mean, like straight, roughly about 2 months after. So in 2 months, they are targeting finishing all of the data analysis. After 2 months, they already start with the well design and well targeting. So October 8th, bright outlook for 2020. Everyone are confident. Let's look now into this meeting. This is the World Energy Capital Assembly, December 3rd. And why this is important? Because this is only 2 or 2.5 weeks before the last OPEC meeting in Vienna for the year. And as you can see on the agenda, when we look into the insight to 2020, nothing different. Everyone was confident that demand will continue to grow at least by 1.5 million per day. And oil price, everyone even said, look, we don't know what could be the bottom, but we are comfortable to say it will be between 50 to 60. The second on the agenda, the remarkable price of gas. This is something that I think is important to share with you. You need to understand and gain more knowledge on gas. In my last meeting, for example, in Germany, one of my customers said, we all know that gas is the short to medium term solution on reducing the carbon emission. So in the future, my company will not be oil and gas, but we will be gas and oil company. So anything, any knowledge, any experience that you can have around gas portfolio, you need to master it. So, and this is what happened. And as you know, like during the OPEC meeting, oil price already increased, not even during the meeting, but during the breakfast of OPEC, right? So overall, it was bright 2020 outlook. So now we have to ask ourselves, right? Like what I have to look at. And as I mentioned before, I hope by now I have shared some information for you to differentiate between what is perception and what are the facts. But you also need to be, you cannot be in denial on the current situation. It is bad, as I mentioned to you before, and it's going to get worse when the OPEC start cutting by May and June. So I also mentioned to you before, the resolution of what happened in the oil and gas today largely is a resolution of the COVID-19. And as you can see in the graph, that's also based on the Rystad research just of April 24. It may take until end of 2020 to make sure that we can, the demand at least can come back above 90 million barrel of oil per day. So the short to medium easily is going to take until end of this year just to come back. Let's not forget, this is the first downturn or the first issue in the oil and gas when we have a problem with demand. Downturn in 2019 and the downturn in 2015, we never had an issue with demand. This is the first time that we are facing issue on the demand, right? And when it comes into NOC and the government, it's gonna take time. They are more resilient, but they also carry a lot of social responsibilities as within their role as an NOCs. Okay, I'm not gonna go into more detail on number 3. We already discussed. What is important is on recovery and production optimization. Okay, so I know that you had a discussion about EOR in Indonesia. So in my last discussion, I think during the IPA, before I moved to London, I shared my thought on EOR. First, EOR is expensive because we make it expensive. If we design EOR, at the same time, we are doing the FID, and then EOR will not be as expensive as what we are seeing today. Right? I mean, how many times we see an EOR effort in Indonesia that you try to inject and they realize that the breakdown pressure is much lower, so they cannot even inject to the well, for example. So EOR is important, but let's not forget, EOR is not an objective. The objective is improving the recovery and production. That's the real objective. So if you're looking into people, for example, doing EOR study for 15 years, my feedback at the time, I told them, look, your people start to see EOR as a hobby. It's important to make sure that the real objective is on the production and recovery. So in the more longer term, it's very important to share with you like what will be the world primary energy demand looks like by 2040. Because this is part of the question that you have in the previous session. If I join the oil and gas today, do you think I can retire in oil and gas? I'm confidently say yes. But you need to be good in what you are doing, okay? And later on, we will talk about that. So when we look into the long term, and during that discussion with, like in that discussion during the Energy Intelligence Conference, we have 85% of the world oil producer. Like I'm in the SIM, I mean the CEO of Aramco was there, CEO of KOC, ADNOC, nearly all of the CEOs are there. And we have a lot of discussion around the outlook, right? So, like whatever I share with you about the industry feedback in Q4 2019 about the outlook, that's still valid today. Yes, you've been hearing bad news. It's going to get ugly, but it's not the end of the world. Okay. However, the lenders now, they don't want to live with promise. If I'm a bank or if I'm a private equity, if I want to lend you money, you cannot promise me the future at this stage. They learn enough from the US shale oil. If you want to get money for your project, you better able to show like how to generate cash flow, let's say more than 20 or more than 30. If you are not able to demonstrate that, forget it. For you as a student, that represents a big opportunity for you. Try to see, for example, what kind of parameters you can use on improving the overall cost per barrel and the recovery factor. Recovery factor is very important. If you talk to OMV in Romania, their problem is not cost per barrel. Their problem is recovery factor. Okay. The second bullet point, I mentioned it before, you need to master anything related to gas, because you're going to see much higher production or mix within our customer portfolio. So the knowledge to improve operational efficiency is very important. This is the spend related to that initiative more likely will continue, because that related into the effort to reduce the carbon emission. I mentioned about digital before, right? I mean, it's a lot that you can offer in digital. But let's not forget, over 80% of the companies that trying digital transformation will fail because they are not defining narrow or small enough on what is digital. Digital transformation in nature is disruptive. That's why it's very important. If you are a student and you can focus, start by digital transformation in subsurface, for example, I personally believe that's the low-hanging fruit for every E&P companies. And then the knowledge to accelerate exploration, we discussed this before when I mentioned about Petrobras 1000 days vision. So the next one is really important to broaden your horizon. Most of the people in this call, you are an engineer. And normally as an engineer, your brain is wired to solve problems. So it's very important that you widen the problem first. If you are a petrotechnical expert, don't look only oil and gas. Look into energy and renewable. At least you change the word of oil and gas to energy. And then you will have a broadened horizon on what opportunity lies ahead of you. What I'm showing you here is the fact that we have the largest geothermal potential in the world. It's 29.5 gigawatt. That's a lot, right? And if you look into average spend per megawatt is between 1.5 to 3.5 million dollar per megawatt. So that spread between 1.5 to 3.5, that's your opportunity as a student. Why certain operators in geothermal have to spend 3.5 million per megawatt, and what you can do as a student, either you are bachelor, master, or PhD, to improve it. Because that's one of the largest potential that we have in Indonesia. And beyond that, is much needed by our country and by our people. In my last discussion with the Directorate General of Renewable, if you look into the government objective by 2025, the simplest way to say is like, whatever our country already achieved in the last 30 years, they want to multiply that by 4 at 1/3 of the time. So that's a big opportunity for all of you in the call. If you are a PhD student and you can see a technology where you can develop the low temperature resources in geothermal, a lot of people will be calling you, for example. So that's what I share up to now, is really to share with you a little bit to balance between what you've been hearing and what the reality in the industry. In the next 2 slides, and just to close our 45 minutes presentation before we start the Q&A, I would like to share information that could be useful for you the time you will try to get the jobs. So this is the rating that we are using in our company, which is, I don't think that's much different compared to most of the companies, not only in the oil and gas. That's the definition of the rating, performance appraisal rating, A, B, C, and D. I believe A is basically like, if you are a student, your index prestasi is 4, for example. So let's start to see between A and B. And I want you actually to see first what is B. If you are above expectation, you already carry a heavy definition because you exceed objective in some significant area, including the most challenging objective. So that's already a heavy statement to satisfy. That's B. So what is the difference with A? So people with A or outstanding performer in the company, these are the people that normally they can achieve the next evolution beyond the original expectation. These are the people that normally you learn a lot in your self-development, you gain a lot of knowledge, therefore you can bring creativity and initiative in what you are doing. That's A. The second attribute is the fact that you need to be a team player. That's A. The definition will be. The C definitely is meeting expectation. You achieve most of your objective, but you always need help from time to time. The D, something that you may not want to hear. If I give D mean I will fire the guy the next day. There's no D in my organization. Why? Because simply that's the reality today. If we give you already the opportunity to improve for the last 12 months, and by the end of the year, you are still rated D, there's no place for you, unfortunately. This is something that you may not want to hear, but let's not forget, I'm here to make sure I share the reality. So if you want to have a better chance, especially now where a lot of companies are cutting their staff, whatever you are doing today, even if you are a student, even if you are starting in the university, try to see what is A means and try to go to that direction. So the next one is the key elements. Like when we interview like a future, let's say a prospect, let's say as a prospective student or a future employees, we always try to evaluate within these 4 key elements. Within these 4, the biggest one is integrity. That's the first one. So, and that's the reason why, and this is exactly the definition that we have in our company, right? Integrity, we have 3 things to see. First is the integrity in ethics. The second is the integrity in service quality, and the third is service integrity in health, safety, and environment. If you cannot get this thing 200%, work on it now, because this is very important. And only after that, we evaluate the commitment, drive, and teamwork. I will not go into more detail because in the next slide, I will elaborate on these 4 elements. So if you look into job interview, fundamentally it's your opportunity to share your credible claims. Your interviewer or the HR representative for a company will ask you a question, and that's your opportunity to share a credible claim. As a student, even if you are starting or you almost graduate, make sure that your index prestasi or GPA is not only the reflection for your ability to learn. You need to make sure whatever you are studying and learning is relevant into the business needs. Because if not, you will be in deep trouble the time you graduate. Make sure whatever you learn is relevant. So, and that's the reason why I put this 5 bullet point, because it's really important for you to be ready to demonstrate these 5 things. Okay? And this is the 5 things that even if you apply to banking sector, even if you apply to private equities or any companies, you have to be ready to demonstrate this. I'll let you to read it yourself, because this is the last slide that I will share with you today before we start the Q&A. But it's really important that, you know, like within the time that you have, see the number 1 to 5 and try to see how me as a student, the time I'm in front of someone that doing the interview, I can make a credible claim based on true example from number 1 to 5. Okay. I will elaborate number 4, which is really important, on diversity. And this is important because most of the time, people are not talking enough. Diversity is really, really important. Especially for Indonesia, is the diversity in gender. Let's not forget that, take an example of United States. If the gender balance improved in the United States, their GDP would have been 10% higher. Take an example of Egypt. A better gender balance will increase the GDP by 15%, for example. Worldwide, statistically, every $1 that men earn, the woman get only 54 cents. This is not right. And this is the reason why, for example, Schlumberger in Indonesia, we decided to sponsor PhD only for female students, because we want to make sure in the future we're going to have more female role model to bring the rest of the female population in Indonesia. If you are a man, do not think that this is not your problem, by the way. First, because of the GDP that I mentioned before. Second is the fact that the gender balance will only be fixed through gender unity. If the gender balance, always a conversation, stay within the female population, we are heading totally to the wrong direction. So with that, I will close my presentation. Something that I share, the same slide that I shared over 10 years ago when I was a recruiter. the road to success is always under construction. It will get bumpier in the next 12 months, yes. Based on what I saw you, do you still have the future in the industry? The answer is a big yes. With that, I conclude my presentation, Pak Benny.
Thank you, Pak Aroni, for the detailed elaboration about what's happening now and what's left for us in the future. Untuk itu saya ingin buka, Pak Aroni mungkin bisa start video. Kita akan mulai tanya jawab dengan adik-adik mahasiswa. Oke. Saya akan persilakan teman-teman mahasiswa untuk bisa gunakan raise hand. Teman-teman bisa tanya dalam bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris. Pak Roni akan menjawab. Hanya permintaan saya hanya satu. Silakan to the point, simple, because we want to get as many questions as we can in the next 45 minutes. Pertama, Mas Dimas Prasetyo, bisa disebutkan juga asal perguruan tingginya, Mas ya? Silakan, Mas Dimas.
Hello, tes.
Ya, silakan Mas Dimas.
Thank you. Let me introduce myself. My name is Dimas Prasetyo. I'm an industrial engineer, and I obtained my master degree in two degree, which are Master of Engineering and Master of Business and Administration. Basically, I'm in a vacant position. Pak Berry, apa saya kedengaran tadi suaranya, Pak? Kedengaran?
Bisa, tapi agak putus-putus, Pak Dimas.
Oh gitu.
Ya. Silakan dilanjutkan Pak Dimas.
Ya, yang saya tes kedengaran ya Pak Benny ya Pak? Dengar Pak?
Ya.
For Pak Roni, I wanna ask because I had been interviewed by Halliburton company, which means that it's the formidable opponent from Schlumberger basically. But I had been offered for the cementing process engineer. This is the position, which means that it's the outstream process, basically. Is the outstream process, the final process in upstream in oil and gas. But the things that I want to ask is about: is it possible to recover in the near future for the outstream? Because I mean that Pak Roni asked to switch in renewable energy or geothermal, or is it possible to regain our chance to get involved in the outstream process? This is my question. Thank you.
Oke, terima kasih Mas Dimas.
Yeah.
Ya, kita ambil 3 pertanyaan dulu Pak Roni ya. Saya persilakan selain Mas Dimas, Mas Fikri Fatah Firdaus, silakan. Mas Fikri, biar saya bantu unmute Mas Fikri.
Ini untuk saya, Mas
ya,
Alfa.
Kita Mas Alfa dulu, ya silakan Mas Alfa.
Oke, Pak Roni, I want to ask you a question. Actually, I'm a fresh grad from ITB. My major is mechanical engineer. And I just landed my job as a field engineer at oil field service company. And at this moment, I recently heard that our company plan to cut the staff off. So do the other company, maybe not only my company, also the other oil field service company will cut the cost, like reduction in number of the employee, right? And I would like to ask you that you can give me an advice to me as a mechanical engineer graduate and an energy enthusiast. Should I turn around from this industry or just wait and see until the condition is stable? Yeah, that is my question, Pak.
Terima kasih Mas Alfa. Satu lagi saya ingin undang Mas Agung Akbar. Silakan Mas Agung. Saya akan bantu unmute. Ya, silakan Mas Agung.
Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Agung Akbar. I'm come from Palembang and I take college in Polytechnic Akademigas of Palembang and my major is Bachelor in Engineering. So I would like to ask you a question, sir. I will graduate in this year exactly, and my target is I would like to apply for the job in multinational company, of course, like Halliburton and then Slabbercy and else. So in this year, we know the problem is about oil price and else, right? So I want to ask, what is your suggestion for us in this problem in the world like this to apply for the job in the multinational company? Is still possible for us to apply for the job? That's all my question. Thank you, sir.
Terima kasih Mas Agung Akbar. Pak Roni, I think kalau saya bisa rangkum 3 pertanyaan ini sebetulnya masih lebih ke rasa resah teman-teman, termasuk kami juga, tentang apa yang akan terjadi 6 bulan sampai 12 bulan ke depan. Probably you can share your insight and your advice.
Okay, so I think it's a good question. So I prefer to answer it mungkin satu-satu dulu ya Pak Benny ya, because I think it's important to clarify a few things.
Yes, silakan Pak.
Yang pertanyaan pertama, I think it's important for me to clarify that I'm not asking you to switch your gear and go to renewable, for example. It's very important for you to consider any opportunity that you have today. So and this is the problem, right? I mean, because I'm also an engineer, you are an engineer, that a lot of time you only consider either 1 or 0. And this is important because if you are in the situation like this, it's very important for you to look into, because what you are studying actually is also useful for many industry, even mining. So if you have opportunity oil and gas, definitely that's the closest to what you are learning. You have to prioritize that. But let's not forget, you also have to look into what other opportunities are available. So if you look into, let's say, take Halliburton and Schlumberger, based on what you just mentioned on the first question. Halliburton roughly has always been, let's say, 60% US land, 30% international. Schlumberger normally is the other side. We normally 30 to 40% in US land, and we are more in international. So going forward, you will see more resilience in international compared to what you see in North America, right? So Halliburton is also a good company. I mean, we always love to have competition, right? But that's the outlook today. And that's the reason why they are cutting down a lot of investment also in US land. So if you pursuing opportunity with Halliburton, for example, it's always better for you to pursue the opportunity of Halliburton in international. And to be more specific, go to Middle East. Halliburton also have a lot of good projects in Middle East. These are the projects that you should be aiming. So that's on the first question. The second question from Alpha, from ITB, basically everyone is cutting today, right? But as the reason why I share with you on the overall short-term to medium and also long-term, because I don't want you to see that whatever you see in the last 3 weeks is the end of the oil and gas industry. It's not. So if you have the ability to wait, you should wait and then gain new knowledge to make you more relevant until end of 2020. That's my suggestion for Alpha from ITD. And the last question from Pak Agung Akbar from Palembang, on the multinational companies, we have to continue recruiting. So if you exclude Russia and China, as we speak today, there are 2,519 drilling rigs operating worldwide. So I think that explained to you that, or it's better to say like this, the opportunities are still there, but you need to be better than most of the people for you to get the job, right? So I think that's my answer for the first three questions, Pak Benny.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Roni. Teman-teman mahasiswa dan teman-teman yang ingin bertanya, silakan bisa dalam bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris, because apparently kita banyak terima chat juga untuk bisa komunikasinya bilingual, Pak Roni. So I think I'm very open. We are very open for that. Ya,
bahasa
saya
Jawa
akan
juga boleh.
Ya, karena Pak Roni juga dari Jawa tadi juga dibilang. Saya ingin undang lagi Mas Fikri yang tadi belum berhasil. Silakan Mas Fikri.
Hello, let me know if you hear my sound clearly.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for the worthy knowledge. I'm Fikri Fatah, majoring geodetic engineering at Gajah Mada University, and I am the final year student of that major. As you have mentioned later, you have saying this twice. Those are gain more knowledge in oil and gas and master anything that relating to gas and oil. Therefore, I would like to ask, as a major that have a bit related to petroleum industry, where do I have to start? What do I have to learn? What do I have to seek or pursue? And what is your suggestion and advice to us who don't have majoring in the principal major of petroleum industry, such as petroleum and geophysics or geology? Thank you.
Tadi jurusannya apa, Fikri?
Geodetic engineering, sir. Teknik geodesi.
Oh, geodesi, oke. Okay.
Teknik geodesi. Oke, terima kasih Mas Fikri ya.
Ya, terima kasih kembali.
Kemudian Mas Ivori Hanif Hermawan, silahkan.
Okay, thank you for the time. My name is Ivori Hanif. I'm from Universitas Pertamina. My question is, which is the brighter future, geothermal energy or gas industry? Thank you, sir.
Terima kasih, Ivori.
Terima kasih, Mas Fikri. Kemudian Mbak Anissa Amalia.
Okay.
Silakan Mbak Anissa.
Okay. Hello, Pak Roni, and here my name is Anissa Amalia. I'm coming from Geophysics Gajah Mada University. I want to ask, I think, two questions. The first is, if I'm not mistaken, I noted that you said about reduce some skills that we can take opportunities like reducing CO2 and gain more skills at gases and digital transformations. These three stuffs. If we want, as an undergraduate student, if we want to master these things and go to the industry, should we have pursue master or PhD first, so we enter as a professional to go to the major, or we just enter to some recruitments and saying that we have some limited experience about these three stuffs. And my second question is, if we are a technical student and we want to go to the non-technical position in the companies, especially in energy companies or multinational companies, is it possible for us to get that position without any, without having, for example, MBA first or another master degrees in non-technical degrees? Yeah, I think those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you Mbak Anissa. Pak Roni Hendrawan, silakan.
Yeah. So let's start with Anissa dulu ya. So, if you look into non-technical position, which is different from what you are studying, that's normally happen only after your first 3 to 5 years on doing something that relevant to your study. Jadi biasanya yang bisa dari technical ke non-technical itu lebih seperti promotion from within. Jadi perusahaan multinasional itu sangat mengutamakan promotion from within. Jadi kalau ada posisi non-technical, mereka melihat ada existing staff biasanya. Kalau kita bicara tentang fresh graduate, you will have a better chance for you to apply align with what you are studying, biasanya. Tapi nanti down the road, you will always have the opportunity for you actually to go cross-function and also even cross-department, ya, biasanya bisa. Kemudian untuk your first question on the skills on CO2, look, I mean, the reality today, I think you also have to see that not everyone has the luxury to take master degree or PhD. I think it's better to keep the objective to gain the competency in CO2. And there are a lot of ways to get the competency. Like my daughter today, she's studying biomedical science in London. 75% of her lecture is online lecture. That's why sometimes I'm talking to my wife that maybe we are paying too much money to university. So my point is, what is important is use your networking in university. For example, if you are in UGM or if you are in ITB, look into, for example, or even use IATMI. Try to see, is there anyone in IATMI that today is working on CO2 related thesis, and be part of that discussion, for example. Take a project, right? You know, it's a lot of way of learning. Whatever we know, the traditional way of learning is not the only way, right? Use your network, talk to your professor in UGM, for example, and try to see if you can contribute to that. Because, you know, like, and as I mentioned before, it's not everyone can afford to be a master degree or PhD. So that's to answer the question from Anissa Amalia from UGM. And then from Ifori Hani from Pertamina University, which one is better, geothermal or gas? If you look into, and this question will always different, depends on the country where you ask. If you ask me in London, I will give you totally different answer. If you ask in Indonesia, maybe the question will also different. So if the context of your question is Indonesia, which one is better, gas or geothermal? I will see it actually as at par. You have big opportunity in both sides. And I can validate what I just told you, because if you look into the objective to go to, let's say, to go to 7.9 gigawatt in Indonesia, you multiply the required capacity by, let's say, $2.5 million per megawatt, and you take 30 to 40% spend related to what you are studying, you will easily come into more than 20 billion. Okay, that's for geothermal. If you look into gas, you have to really look into the aspect of upstream and the downstream. Depends what you are studying, right? I mean, the future big project in Indonesia will be gas, as we all know, right? So both of them in Indonesia share the same opportunity size. If you ask, for example, Malaysia, and then Malaysia will tell you that gas is more important. If you ask in Turkey, and then Turkey will say, same. We also have big geothermal, we also have big gas opportunity, right? So I hope that answer your question, but you know, like, for you in Indonesia, just pursue these two on the same, let's say, on the equal important. And then from Fikri Fatah from UGM, which is a final year in geodesy, if I'm not mistaken. what are the opportunity? Again, you will only have the opportunity if whatever competency that you have is relevant into the business driver. So when I was a managing director in Indonesia, I always believed that enhanced oil recovery, for example, is one of the theme for the country. Because if you look into the EOR potential, last time when I look at it, this is even twice bigger than our P1 resources. So, and these are important when, for example, I cannot directly give you the answer from your question, but I will share with you on the thought process. Try to see what is your competency and try to see what are the opportunity in Indonesia. Enhanced oil recovery, we like it or not, is important. Don't forget, Indonesia and many countries, whatever happened in the country is always driven by the economic system. In Indonesia, the economic system is social justice. Sila kelima kan, keadilan sosial. That's the economic system of the country. That's the first thing that you have to look at. And then try to see which industry that will help the government to achieve keadilan sosial. These are the industry that more likely will prevail. Okay? So, for your question, I cannot give a direct answer, but think around what I just shared to you. Thank you, Pak Benny.
Okay, terima kasih Pak Roni. I'm collecting questions from the chat right now, but before that, saya mau undang Mas Bang Yando Makmun dari IATMI Pusat. Kalau mau mungkin sampaikan sesuatu, silakan Bang Yando.
Pak Roni, apa kabar? Terima kasih banyak Pak Roni sudah mengisi acara ini. Halo Pak Roni.
Ya.
Silakan.
Ya, terima kasih banyak Pak Roni sudah mengisi acara ini. Kita ada sekitar 300 orang yang hadir ini dan saya yakin kebanyakan mahasiswa. Kalau Pak Roni nggak keberatan, mungkin nanti kita bisa undang lagi Pak Roni ya untuk acara IATMI. Terima kasih Pak.
Pak Yando itu senior saya di Selam Bersih, so enjoy your retirement, Pak Yando.
Terima kasih Pak.
Oke, terima kasih Bang Yando. Pak Roni, ini saya ada pertanyaan dari chat yang saya pikir sangat-sangat relevan untuk teman-teman semua di sini hadir. Sebenarnya menurut Pak Roni, apa skill yang paling dasar, hard skill yang paling dasar, kemudian juga soft skill, tadi juga sudah disentuh, mungkin bisa dielaborasi lebih detail lagi, untuk mereka fresh graduate yang belum punya pengalaman. Sementara di saat seperti ini, kompetisi mereka itu tidak hanya sesama fresh graduate, tapi juga untuk yang profesional yang mungkin masih kena dampak dari krisis tahun 2014 kemarin gitu. Jadi kompetisinya sangat ketat. Kira-kira yang relevan untuk mereka sekarang bagaimana Pak Roni?
Do you mind for me to share satu slide, bisa nggak Pak?
Boleh. Silakan Pak.
I just want to make sure you get, like the most benefit from this discussion, yeah. I will just come back to this, which is relevant to what we will be discussing, ya. Okay, let's start with the hard skill, ya. Kalau dilihat di oil and gas, the oil and gas is an expensive industry, as we know, ya. Makanya di oil and gas itu kan industrinya kan 24/7 ya, karena memang mahal industrinya. Jadi, and that's the reason why in oil and gas, the strength of oil and gas is supported by the in-depth knowledge by the domain. For example, we need someone specialized in reservoir engineering. We need someone specialized in geology, geophysics, etc. Why? Because this is the starting point. If we are not strengthening that specific, really narrow competency, we will make a lot of mistake. Jadi itu dari hard skill-nya, itu sangat penting gitu. Baru setelah itu, the problem that we have today is the fact that the horizontal touch point-nya is really minimum. Dalam arti gini, if you are a drilling engineer, you should be talking more into your asset team. Karena di E&P operators yang di E&P companies biasanya the consequences for the asset to deliver production itu accountability-nya sebenarnya di asset team, bukan di drilling, for example. Jadi dari hard skill-nya, you have to be really good on what you are studying. Itu starting point. How you will achieve the next evolution in the result that we are getting is by you to talk with more of your other species. Believe me, this is a big problem. Most of the engineer normally you are not talking enough to other people. Jadi dari soft skill-nya, what is important is for you to create more touch point across yang disiplin yang berbeda tadi. Right? Reservoir, drilling, you know, like all the way even until the plug and abandonment. Itu yang sangat penting gitu. Makanya dilihat dan what is important is to try to get the opportunity when you is leading. Jadi bukan cuma anggota di salah satu organisasi kemahasiswaan. Jadi anggota bagus, but you have to try to get a role when you lead something. Itu akan penting, ya. Jadi itu mungkin dari yang soft sama hard skill-nya, ya. Kemudian dari yang untuk yang misalnya fresh graduate, from what you mentioned at the beginning. Sebenarnya fresh graduate is okay. Karena banyak di perusahaan multinational company actually selalu this company. Like one of the managing director in Indonesia, namanya Steve Orr, he was an operator before. He was an operator, tapi he's working as an operator while he's studying bachelor degree, and he became the managing director of Indonesia 10 years ago. Mungkin itu dari saya, Pak Benny.
Terima kasih Pak Roni. Saya akan undang lagi Kiki Amrullah untuk bisa bertanya lewat audio. Silakan.
Okay, thank you, Bli Benny. I want to ask Pak Roni, and I'm Kiki. I'm on my final year in Petroleum Engineering ITB. First, I want to ask about how important and how urgent is for us to pursue a master degree to compete in the energy industry, especially for us that will be graduating in 2020 with little or no working experience. And the second question is, I want to ask about how is the development of data analytics and machine learning in the oil and gas industry, and is it recommended for us to enhance our skills in those aspects? Thank you.
Okay.
Silakan Pak Roni bisa langsung dijawab.
Okay.
Ya.
Buat Kiki nanti titip salam ke itu ya, ke siapa? Pak Tutuka ya, in case you meet him.
Oh iya, siap.
I think he's still in ITB. Look, sebenarnya untuk master degree, let's be realistic juga ya. Maksudnya, if you look, the way I see it, it will be at least for the next 12 months, will be tough. Especially when OPEC start to cut the production, which is mean also activity. We are talking more than 2 million barrel cut in Saudi, for example. So we need to be prepared for lower activity. If you have the opportunity for master, definitely you have to take it. If you are in the position that you can take it, you should. Ya. Tapi nanti waktu di master itu, again, you have to consult with your network to try to see what exactly the demand of the industry going forward. Yeah. If you want to take master and you want to, for example, go deeper into enhancing coffee, definitely that will be related to misalnya yang future exploration, that's still relevant misalnya. Jadi to cut it short, I think if you have the opportunity for master, yes, do it. But make sure you take master and you take something which is relevant to the future demand. Ya, itu yang pertama untuk Kiki. Pertanyaan yang keduanya tentang data analytic and machine learning. You know? So the way I see this, you know, like sebenarnya if you look into data analytic, or let's talk about digital overall. Itu sebenarnya what we need is an IT capabilities to support a PTE competency. Ya, jadi when we talk about digital transformation, kebanyakan orang lebih berpikirnya tentang IT. It's not. Sebenarnya yang kita butuhkan itu di digital transformation, itu lebih how you will leverage 5 different domain, all the way from exploration, production engineering, reservoir engineering, geology, and geophysicists. How you gonna transform to accelerate any new initiative dari yang domain ini, at least from the 6 domains in the industry. Itu sebenarnya yang penting gitu. Kalau enggak, itu nanti data analitiknya become a conversation about hardware. So let me share with you in my last plenary. At that time, I was invited by Pertamina. The event is all about what you just asked. It happened in Yogyakarta at that time, right? Everyone was there. We talked about that. Something that I asked the key plenary at the time is one thing. Can you describe what is digital transformation in less than 15 seconds? Not that many people can describe that. The reason why, because if you cannot describe digital transformation in less than 15 seconds, more likely your digital transformation will be a failure. Because you are not precise with the scope, and you know that digital transformation is disruptive in nature. Jadi kalau dari machine learning or data analytic, as you said, the low-hanging fruit from the industry is on subsurface digital transformation. How to see that any decision, for example, happening at the well site, will help you to adjust the parameter in your refinery. For me, that's the real one. We are not ready yet in the industry on digital transformation, misalnya, only to anticipate if something is going to be break in 1 week, I'm going to change it now. It's too expensive to do it. We have to look into what are the low-hanging fruit to improve it. Most of you are a PTE student. The subsurface and surface design, there are a product of reservoir modeling. Very simple, but it's very complex. So I think there where we should focus and where we should start on the data analytic and machine learning. Mungkin itu Pak Benny.
Terima kasih Pak Roni. We still have about 7 minutes left, tapi ini ada dua pertanyaan lagi. Tapi sebelum saya ke dua pertanyaan Pak Roni, ada yang bertanya lewat chat, saya pikir ini cukup menarik. Suppose you have the chance to move outside the oil and gas. Ini kasusnya interview dengan Google misalkan. And then your passion is in the oil and gas. You want to do something in the energy sector, not in particular the oil and gas. Sementara interview ini dengan Google. So what would you do? This is a real case example. And then the second question is, apakah mungkin ketika sekarang kita kemudian keluar dari sektor oil and gas untuk PTE students, geoscience dan petroleum engineering. Mungkin setelah 3-5 tahun lagi ketika situasi sudah bagus, kita kembali ke oil and gas. Is it still realistic? What would be your view, Pak Roni?
Okay, so you know, when you want to find a job, you want to earn money. No, I think you all agree with that. I don't think that you want to get a job and then not to get paid. Jadi, the way I see it, I think we have to be more open-minded on the way we want to decide where you want to work. So, take an example today. One of the main provider actually for data analytic for oil and gas is Google, Microsoft, and Amazon, for example, right? So my suggestion to what you just asked, I strongly suggest that if you want to step out from oil and gas, find something that's still relevant to what you know. For example, if you are joining Google or if you are joining Microsoft, because we are using Microsoft Azure, for example, in Indonesia, you still have a department inside Microsoft and Google that are supporting oil and gas. That, I think, is much better option than you go out and apply for purely a financial institution that has nothing to do with oil and gas. Because you will be in a very fragile position in the next 3-5 years. Because you're learning something new, you cannot contribute yet, right? And they're already paying your costs, right? So I think that's important. If you want to step out, you know, broaden your horizon. Like if it's an IT, what kind of IT that still have a touch point into oil and gas? Okay. Regarding the second question on moving out and in, look, I personally believe whatever we see today, you will start to see the improvement in no more than 18 months. So if you have the opportunity, it's better for you to join, let's say, internship or vacation training or whatever, but to deepen your knowledge related to energy, for example. Right? If you still consider oil and gas or energy as an option, and then take the opportunity to acquire the knowledge. For example, you can apply to, for example, like internship program in Pertamina, because I know Pertamina has a big internship program, and try to achieve the new knowledge, right? But for you to in and out after 2-3 years, is simply that time window is just too narrow. You cannot be in and out in the company for 2 years, and then it's better to decide on this is the knowledge that I want to acquire, and this is what I'm going to do. Same like what I discussed with Pak Benny a couple of weeks ago in London. You know, it's important for you to define what do you want success look like for you and your family, and try to work it backward. Try to see what are steps required. Don't take short-term turbulence to deviate you totally from what you want to do. Mungkin itu Pak Benny.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Roni. Saya ingin undang in the last a few minutes Mas Faisal dan Mas Christian. Saya mulai dari Mas Faisal. Silakan Mas Faisal.
Terima kasih, Li. Perkenalkan, nama saya Faisal dari Universitas Pertamina. Izin bertanya Pak Roni mengenai masa depan unconventional hydrocarbon di Indonesia. Menurut Pak Roni, untuk Indonesia sendiri masa depan unconventional hydrocarbon itu seperti apa sebagai dasar bagi lulusan-lulusan tahun selanjutnya untuk lebih memperdalam keilmuan di bidang tersebut. Karena yang kita tahu mungkin di kampus-kampus banyaknya belajar tentang conventional hydrocarbon. Terima kasih.
Okay.
Oke, terima kasih Mas Faisal.
Saya jawab saja Pak Benny.
Kita ambil satu lagi dari Mas Christian.
Ya.
Silakan Mas Christian.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Sonny Christian. I'm from Balikpapan. I'm graduate from STT Migas Balikpapan, and now I'm on progress to master degree. But actually, 2 years ago, I have get a job in oil and gas company. Now I'm working in totally in Indonesia and now called Pertamina Hulu Makam. In my imagine, when I get the job, I'm in the core business like reservoir or drilling engineering. But actually, my job is in the operation support, like I'm preparing material for operation. And then my question is, I wanna show you by your overview about my opportunity or chance to get a international career. Thank you. Terima kasih.
Oke, silakan Pak Roni.
Oke, so mungkin saya jawab dari yang terakhir dulu ya. Jadi, look, Pertamina is a great company. You are lucky if you can be with, for example, Pertamina Hulu Mahakam. Okay, if you look into next 20, 30 years, you will see that NOCs should be gaining more and more footprints in the operation. If you have opportunity with Pertamina, take it, no doubt, right? I mean, and don't forget that by end of, I think this year or next year, once Pertamina took over the blocks in Rokan, more than 80% of the activity in Indonesia will be belong to Pertamina. Don't forget that, okay? And don't forget that Pertamina already acquired Morel and Prom based in Paris with a lot of asset in Africa, okay? Pertamina is also working in Algeria, right? So if you can join Pertamina, Pertamina is a great company, and you will also have the opportunity to be overseas, okay? Because as any other companies, you know, like you have to be among the best for you to be chosen for your international assignment, yeah? But I think that's what is important. I mean, Pertamina Hulu Mahakam, I mean, again, you know, like if you look into PHM, you must be busy because you have at least 1,000 wells on production, right? So a lot of opportunities. And if you have the opportunity to be working for Pertamina Hulu Mahakam, you will learn a lot because PHM used to be the biggest drilling activity worldwide for Total. I'm talking worldwide, right? You will learn a lot if you have an opportunity to work for Pertamina. And once you perform well and you are within the best performer in Pertamina, the international assignment is available. So the next question is on the future of unconventional. I'm gonna share with you like what is the fact outside, because unconventional in Indonesia seems like it's a new business. But unconventional outside Indonesia, a lot of them is already a major business, okay? So if you look into unconventional, you have definitely shale oil. Within the context of Indonesia, your low-hanging fruit, I think more from the coal bed methane, right? Not from the shale oil yet, but from the CBM. So you like it or not, in principle, unconventional will be done when most of other opportunities are not available. That's the last resources for many countries, okay? So you like it or not, that's the reality. If they still have a good field to bring the production, I don't think they're gonna go to unconventional. With exception on one thing, with exception within the context of unconventional for energy security in Indonesia, okay? Because if you look into Indonesia, like, and it happened to me last time when I was discussing with one of the minister, I cannot disclose his name, but he said, you know, if the oil and gas is cheap, I will continue buying and maybe I don't need to drill or to explore. So I told them back like, "Pak, agree, but don't forget the energy security is one of, you know, like the fundamental in our country. And don't forget, based on the current import every day, if one day Indonesia being put as an embargo, and then half of Indonesia will be dark. So To summarize about unconventional, the reality is the last resources when any other resources is not available. You may still have the opportunity within the context of energy security. I think that's just to close on the last question, Pak Benny.
Terima kasih Pak Roni. I think we are approaching the end of today's session. And with that, if you can give 1 minute closing remarks to all of the students, Pak Roni.
Yeah, look, 23 years ago, I was exactly on your position, right? And now the challenge that you have looks really, really bad because of what you've been looking in the television or in the newspaper about oil and gas. I want to reassure you that there are still opportunity in oil and gas. What is important for you is to worry about things that is under your control and under your hand. And that's not about the oil price, that's not about the oil and demand supply, but on how you as a student, the time you graduate, you will be extremely good on what you are learning, and the time you are in front of someone that interview you for a job, you can share a credible claim on exactly what you have done to validate what you said. I think that's my closing remark, Pak Benny.
Alright, terima kasih banyak Pak Roni untuk bisa kumpul dengan kita virtually selama 90 menit, dan terima kasih teman-teman mahasiswa semua yang sudah bergabung. Saya dengan Jackson, Mas Puput, kemudian ada Adi, Bang Bona, dan yang lain-lain juga ucapkan terima kasih. Semoga ini bukan jadi yang terakhir kita bisa berinteraksi. I think we need more and more collaborative actions from the senior and the young Indonesian, Pak Roni. And thank you everyone for joining today. Rekaman ini nanti akan kita unggah di YouTube channel IATMI UK, sudah direkam sejak awal. Dan stay safe and stay healthy and stay productive. Thank you so much everyone. Thank you Pak Roni.
Terima kasih Pak Benny.
Well done Pak Roni. Well done Beli.
Terima kasih.
Halo teman-teman semua. Terima kasih telah mengikuti diskusi hari ini sampai selesai. Semoga teman-teman bisa mendapat manfaat dari acara hari ini. IATMI UK akan mengirimkan survei evaluasi setelah acara ini. Jadi kami mohon saran dan juga kritik untuk perbaikan di masa depan. Terima kasih dan sampai jumpa di sesi maraton berikutnya. Tetap sehat dan jaga kesehatan. Salam sinergi, IATMI UK.